Well, hello, that's me again, and it is the 9th of October, and let's not put things away for too long, and let's start talking about the Crimean breach, which is, of course, while very important event symbolically, was blown out of proportions literally. And let me explain one thing. I wrote about it in my blog. And now that we know that basically bridge was operational back within 24 hours, and the only two spans which have been lost, they probably will be restored pretty fast, and bridge will be fully operational, 100% operational in no time. But that's the whole thing. We're looking at the act of the state terrorism. And obviously the first thing which American media did, including this Washington Post and New York Times, look what they did. What a funny maneuver, you know. And they say that Ukraine behind the Crimean bridge blast, US media. They did it before even the, obviously, FSB concluded its, well, pretty obvious investigation. And Vladimir Putin actually was very specific, speaking about who did it, which is, of course, was the main culprit, the SBU, which is the security service of the Ukraine, and of course there was other data available at this stage, as much as was reasonably thoughtful to present it to public, that there were several countries involved. And Putin also states that there was basically Ukraine primarily, but that's where this but becomes, and hence this publication of the Washington Post and New York Times. Because obviously they don't want the United States to be basically pointed out as a culprit, but it is obvious that the West, and especially people like MI6 and CIA, they are involved directly with the planning and executing of those things, because Ukraine is effectively run by London and Washington, D.C. And we'll talk about this shortly in this segment, which I'm presenting to you. But because those people are, as I already stated, the only work they can conduct really and competently is in media and PR field, they need some kind of symbolic events. They failed on this symbolic event even, because the bridge was back into operation, and both passenger and cargo trains, basically the traffic was never interrupted really. So they continue to pour into Crimea, and of course including all those very serious volumes of the hardware and personnel in Crimea, which probably most likely, I don't know how soon, don't quote me on that, months and a half, they will be pouring out of Crimea into the Kherson area to probably, just drive the offensive towards Nikolaev and Odessa. But again, don't quote me on that. I don't know. Russian general staff may change things, as they please. So, but the point is that it was classic Western linear thinking, exactly the same linear thinking which actually brought about the catastrophe, economic catastrophe to Europe, and the coming catastrophe to the United States. But the point is that they should know, they have operational departments, they have people who studied something at least, and the question, of course, is the fact that Crimean bridge is 12 miles long, 19 kilometers. And it's called linear target for a reason. And I spoke about this and wrote about it in my blog, and this is about the fact of the famous terrorist diversionary and kind of type tactics when, for example, people blow up railroads. They don't blow them up to basically disable railroad. It's very difficult to disable railroad unless you really blow it for the lengths of several dozens of kilometers. And even then, because railroads, especially modern railroads, are restored really fast. Everything is done in this particular case against this linear target. That means the target, which is very long in length, is to basically derail the passing train. The train is the target, not the railway per se, especially nowadays. And when you have nothing really specifically going on the Crimea Bridge, it was obviously the feeble attempt to blow up the very long linear target, and this was done obviously for the reasons of pure propaganda, and and judging by the many psychos who basically occupy the modern Western governments, and their glee and being giddy about all that. I mean, yeah, they're not normal people. They don't understand things of this nature. But this is a state terrorism, and while Vladimir Putin obviously has been very specific, pointing out to SBU, which is of course the Ukrainian security services, everybody understands, tacitly so to speak. It's kind of implied that of course it was the people like MI6 involved there directly. And to understand what I'm talking about, there is a news all over the place in Russian internet, and these are from serious correspondents, that actually the diversionary recon group have been caught in Lugansk and Donetsk area, and guess what they were doing? Right, they were sizing up kindergartens. And as I already stated, for people in London, it's their normal, modus operandi. If they kill hundreds of children, it's fine. That's what they do. And after all, the proud tradition of the late Madeleine Albright, who thought that 500,000 of Iraqi children were a good fair price to pay for democracy, you're talking about, again, as I already stated, psychos. And that's the people who actually run the combined West today. But even before the Crimean Bridge, which is already stated, it's backed into operation, and it's probably, I don't know how long it will take, months maybe, to restore completely the lane of the car lane, which was destroyed with those two spans. It continues to operate. And there will be more attempts on that, of course. But again, we have to only sit and pray that it will be something like infrastructure object instead of the school children or kindergarten children. And you have to understand, these people, they do not consider Russians humans. For example, most people in the State Department in the United States, they consider Russians as subhumans. So, and when you look at those people who run it, you understand that. And this is what I wanted to make sure that you have a grasp about. Look at this. Maria Zakharova, she basically yesterday, she stated when talking on one of her presses, and in the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, he was answering the question of one of the correspondents who basically asked her this, and this is the full translation of her response. Here it is. That was machine translated because I'm really lazy. I just fixed some things there, here and there. But basically, when he said American Foreign Policy Department, he meant State Department, recently publicly indicated the readiness of the United States for diplomacy with Russia on Ukraine. How could you comment on this signal? Look how Russia comments on this signal. The public signals coming from the US administration in recent days in the context of what is happening in Ukraine combine provocative militancy and chaotic allusions to the possibility of an appropriate Russian-American dialogue. Secretary of State Mr. Blinken was vague on this score. He said the US would be ready to respond if Moscow showed any serious intentions. Meanwhile, a couple of weeks ago, he flatly denied the very possibility of seeking a diplomatic solution. However, the main thing is the real steps taken by the Americans and their satellites, and they radically contradict the ostentatious rhetoric that claims to be peaceful. The supply of arms to the regime of Zelensky is increasing. The number of Western mercenaries and instructors is growing directly on the ground. The United States is getting deeper and deeper into the multifaceted support of its clients in Kiev, and this is against the backdrop of Zelensky's insane calls to his masters to launch a preventive nuclear strike on Russia. Such irresponsible demagoguery apparently is beginning to frighten even those who demand to defeat Russia on the battlefield. From here, apparently, the flouncing about of the Joe Biden team stems, which itself has nurtured evil, it seems, without even thinking about the catastrophic consequences for the world and, most importantly, for itself. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and as I already stated, those people are not normal people, it's kind of almost fait accompli, the total degeneration of the whatever the Western elites are today. But point is that Zakharova is absolutely correct that first, and Putin and many people now speaking obviously that the Ukraine is the terrorist state, and its main, not sponsor, essentially Ukraine doesn't have economy anymore. Basically, the United States supplies and supports financially the whole thing there with all those, jackals and small, tabakis like United Kingdom and all those lapdogs, basically flouncing around about, if you wish. And the point here is that resorting to the terrorist acts like that is exactly what the only thing they can do, really. I mean, and again, as I stated, when you look at those American generals or Mr. Pompeo, which is another wowzer, who says that it's symbolic defeat for Russia. Yeah, sure, blowing the civilian infrastructure. Of course it is defeat. I'm being facetious, of course, but the point is, even this guy, and Mr. Pompeo is not known to be some kind of the intellectual, he started responding to the facts that even Mr. Biden begins to, when he stated about the Armageddon, Pompeo today states that those comments were reckless. Pompeo slams Biden's Armageddon remarks. And as he stated, those comments were reckless, said Pompeo, who served in the cabinet of former President Donald Trump, on Fox News Sunday, calling Biden's statements a terrible risk to the American people. Well, if you think so that only Mr. Pompeo has his basically, sphincter just, shrinking dramatically from this, it's not a joke. It's not just the preparation for political preparation for the midterms, which are, of course, very important. It is the fact that, and as much as the American establishment loves to project themselves extremely powerful, and we have to tell, those damn Ruskies, what they will expect of them. They actually, the United States is very weak economically and militarily. And that is why, for example, as again, terrorism is the weapon of the weak. That is why you will see more, more active terrorist activity in Russia proper. And again, as I already stated, will those people be stopped by, for example, blowing the kindergarten? No. They will blow kindergarten or school if they need to, I mean, hey, that's what they were doing for the last how many years? I don't know, many. And that is why now suddenly when this, the rhetoric went that far by Mr. Biden, or rather whoever controls him, and we have even this, our very emotional Mr. Kirby. And the Pentagon finally also putting their foot down about that no indication Russia will use nukes, White House. President Joe Biden's warning of Armageddon was not based on any intelligence, spokesman Joe Kirby said. It is very correct. There is no intelligence in the White House. And I'm talking about intelligence like IQ and mental capabilities. American intelligence in terms of the recon and intelligence is a joke, basically, which is it was the butt of the joke for a long time now, and CIA and all those recon and intel organizations, they stopped real spying long time ago. They are mostly and primarily are into the same media war. They need to create this, illusion and basically the bubble of the impenetrable information, if you wish, and people live like that, because they are pumped with all those psycho news by the American media. And again, those are stuffed with those people like, Brianna Killer. The girl has no education, really. Don't tell me that bachelor's degree in journalism is any education. But there you go. You have people like that who, present their opinions, and they cannot have any normal competent judgment on anything. But that's what is happening, because obviously news today, if you want some tactical, so to speak, what you would call sit-rap, there were again attempts by the armed forces of Ukraine and truckload of Polish, British, and American volunteers, many of them, as I already stated, slaughtered in the copious amounts. They tried to attack along the whole line. And some people, for example, like Mr. Rogov, and of the military civilian administration of the Zaporozhye, He says that, yeah, basically it's primarily British who try to do so, but let me ask you a question. Have you seen any encirclements of Russian troops? No. And you will not. But the point is, of course, that that's what they're trying to do, because they're run by the guys from the Sandhurst, which is main British military academy, and Sandhurst didn't produce a serious military leader in ages, not to speak of the fact that basically the whole ground forces of United Kingdom are, well, about one full combat-ready brigade, and another brigade is about half ready. The whole army will fit into the Wembley Stadium. So now you're telling me that these guys who were paying to Taliban to let go or be, able to basically peacefully withdraw from Helmand province, I mean, and they can conduct serious combined arms operations, really? How about somebody starts a normal, good course on military history in the Sandhurst? Because when you have people like Anthony Beaver, who is pretty much in the direct propaganda and misinformation, and he's the Sandhurst product. So, I mean, you have to ask the question, are those people that stupid? Many are. I'm sorry, guys. This is one of the things which special military operation actually very well illuminated to a degree of degeneracy and imbecility of people who run the Western world. And this is just absolutely appalling and shocking. Again, I knew this all along, but I never knew that it was to such a degree. And now when special military operations started and you begin to see those indications, manifestations of this all over the place, you really begin to scratch your head, because it's scary. It's downright scary. You literally have people who don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to do real spying. They don't know how to do real recon. They don't know how to really fight combined arms operations, especially when they outnumber these damn Ruskies 1-3. Russia still fights with 3 times smaller force than armed forces of Ukraine are placing, including their NATO alliance, along the front line. And now, of course, yeah, this other thing which I want to address for you people to understand, apart from this, yeah, they need the symbolic things, they need to win something, they need to present to public how great they are, which they are not, and create this impression. That's why the state terrorism, and again, here you can quote me, the terrorist activity on Russia proper territory will continue. It will increase. So expect more attacks on the transport infrastructure, and also killing as many civilians as possible, including children. This is the only thing people in London know how to do. So, but point is that when we speak about it, we should not forget this issue which I spoke about when I was talking about operations and about how they actually, why, for example, Russian military and what is called allied military, partially equipped and partially integrated LDNR militias, not all of them are fully integrated with Russian forces, can basically do this front containment while having not enough forces. Very simple. Communications, and what is called net centricity, that net-centric warfare, the way it operates, the way it commands and controls troops. And here we are. Obviously, Mr. Musk, who is very proud of his Starlink, had a real unpleasant surprise for his Starlink a few days ago, when those Starlink terminals, which are freely distributed in the armed forces of Ukraine and whatever the volunteers, quote unquote, fight with them and represent their main communications tactical network, they started to break down. And some people blame it on the actually Russian special electronic countermeasure equipment. They call Tirada, which is tirade or something else, but I have to address this. Few days ago, a number of the Russian cities you can easily find in the internet, and this is not some amateurs who are doing this. They're including respectable media who also posted it because they saw it themselves. Russian cities from Murmansk to St. Petersburg to hell knows what saw those huge columns of light, just shooting up into the skies. And this was happening for like one evening. And then suddenly the Starlink terminal started to break down, and armed forces of Ukraine started to lose any kind of communications and tactical communications network, which of course was Starlink based. And people begin to speculate. I don't think so it's speculation. It is a well-known fact that that type of weaponry was being developed in Russia, even in the Soviet Union for a long time. In United States, I believe it was called HARP, but I won't go there because I don't know. But I can tell you absolutely for sure that issue of the changing the ionization of the atmosphere is a very well developed concept, and who knows what Russia has in terms of this technology. But evidently the collapse of the Starlink is directly connected to those old funny looking columns of light. So, and this is just the part of the issue with the electronic countermeasure and capabilities Russia didn't demonstrate yet. So, but this is just one of such demonstrations. So, and we better start thinking seriously about what is still in store and what could be used in case of the real war. And this is the thing which many people do not understand, and I have to reiterate it again and again, and you can look it up in my videos previously. Systems fight, networks fight. No, not some company of the, you can go with some company of very good, fighters and well equipped, and then you're going to lose the company. And it could be obviously tragedy for their parents or wives and things of this nature. But the point is, on operational strategic level, this would be like a tactical setback. Reality, however, is how you look at operationally and strategically on the whole thing, how you play it. And the fundamental issue in this particular case for Russians is the ability to suppress their enemy's countermeasures, electronic warfare systems, and of course communications. And that's when people say, okay, what would be the real war? Okay, let me explain what will be in the real war. It is well-known fact that the United States in each hour has about 70 different satellites flying over their basically Russia and Ukraine, which is the main theater of operations. In real war, there would have been no those satellites anymore in real, because Russia has full capability to wipe everything off the sky, from the space, and leave basically United States and NATO basically deaf and blind. But that's what many people don't understand. They also don't understand that Russia cannot do it now for a simple reason, because attack on the space asset is in fact casus belli. It's the start of the war, and I mean serious war. So that is why it is kind of the game of all those means and systems which have to play still in their pretty much peaceful time framework without attacking each other. But this is what it is. And as I already stated, there were reports of actually a complete breakdown of the tactical networks, communication networks of the armed forces of Ukraine, which were based on those Starlink and those small terminals which have been, basically distributed to them in the last few days. And I mean complete breakdown. So keep this in mind too. So it's not that simple. This war is not that simple, although we already know that what is going on more or less strategically and a little bit operationally. But in the end, if you ask me, what is this all about? Why Mr. Medvedev talks about this full unconditional surrender? Let me show you again. This is the worst nightmare for the United States, and this is happening right now. They cannot really report on this. This is what is this all about. Russia could be the biggest beneficiary of OPEC plus cuts. And the question is, Russia will not cut any output while the price of oil is set to rise in the coming month. So, and you remember all what happened when OPEC plus just cut down 2 million of the barrels per day production, and the United States was really pissed off. The United States was pissed off not only because, obviously, of the cut per se. That is a symbolic slap on the face by none other than Saudi Arabia. And that is a huge political issue because let me give you some news which you can easily read. People in Congress and US Senate, I mean, and again, we already spoke about the intellectual level of those people. They found out how to punish Saudi Arabia. Do you know how they want to punish Saudi Arabia? They want to withdraw the remnants of the American and other troops from the Saudi Arabia, which allegedly were defending Saudi Arabia. Let me give you a little bit of a hint here. They were not defending Saudi Arabia per se, but there is only one country which can now communicate between what Saudi is really afraid of, which is Iran, and Saudis themselves. And guess what else? Think about who Mr. Salman, Ben Salman, or the those prince, who effectively is running the Saudi Arabia, talked to a lot. You are correct, Vladimir Putin. And let me tell you, he knows, especially after those stellar, quote unquote, I'm being facetious, of course, it's a complete technological failure of the PAC-3, Patriot PAC-3 anti-air defense systems, which were, by the way, meant by the American personnel who couldn't stop the slow-flying Houthi drones, which blew up one of the major production facilities in Saudi Arabia. Guess what Saudi Arabia would want to have? We already know what they would want to have. They would want to have Russian air defense systems. And once Russia penetrates a Saudi military, Saudi armament market big time, that will be the end of the petrodollar, because petrodollar is obviously a recycling dollar, but we're gonna talk about this separately sometime later. But this is what I wanted to tell you today, because obviously I couldn't stay away from the issue of the Crimean bridge. I couldn't stay away from the issue of the state terrorism as the admission of the defeat, because obviously there are still some smart people. There are some people with integrity who are still left in Pentagon, CIA, maybe in the State Department. That I don't know. There's a lot of issues with State Department. But basically, there's still some professionals who understand where it is all going. And that's what I wanted to talk to you today. And as always, guys, those who like me, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon. That will allow me to basically do what I do, and probably trying to basically remove myself a little bit from this news minutiae, all those everyday details about all those PR and media huge events, and continue with the issues of the operations and history, especially military history. And that's my intent so far, guys. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.